I think if you look at like lowest paid majors, philosophy has to be.
Yeah, because I mean, the only career you can really have with philosophy that's decent is teaching philosophy for the most part.
Right.
But that's not to say it'll be tremendously helpful in whatever you do.
So that's why I'd say major in philosophy.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever you are listening to this. We're All In Podcast, and we're back, season 2. Woo! Oh man, it's been a little while. We had to regroup here. Wanted to go on a different track.
More than a
little while. What was it? A little after Christmas.
The last time. Yeah. So month and a half, 6 weeks.
Yeah, about 6 weeks or so. Even longer since we recorded, I guess.
Yeah. Wait, I think we recorded like the day after Christmas last time.
I think so.
Wow.
Season 1 was fun. We put out 3 episodes that we're pretty happy with. You know, we went vegan for a little while. We decided to wake up 6, which as students was a bit of a shock. And then we did one on our time as D1 club athletes at the University of Texas at Austin on the rowing team.
D1 being a lightly used term, but you know, at the end of season 1, we're essentially talking about stuff that we have no idea. We had no idea what we were talking about. You know, going vegan, like the first episode should be a disaster, and I think that episode was because we had no idea what we were talking about. You know, we just did it. Like, yeah. You know. But that being said, in season 2, we're actually going to talk about stuff that the University of Texas has designated that we're fit to talk about, which are college majors, and we're going to bring on some of our friends too. We have a law student that'll be on the show. I'll be talking about economics, and today we'll be talking about philosophy, which Tom has a degree in addition to chemistry. Not an easy thing to do, was it, Tom? Or was it?
It was fun. It wasn't easy. It was fun.
Yeah. So I basically know nothing about philosophy. I'm in a political theory class right now, and it's probably the first time in college that I've heard Aristotle mentioned, which is, you know, some would call that a shame. But then again, for an economics major, it's like, yeah. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So you're a philosophy chemistry double major.
Yeah. So I got, for the folks out there, I got my
with that.
No, so I came in undeclared with no major. So, but I knew I wanted to do pre-med and try to go to medical school eventually. So, and I figured, you know, you don't really have to be any specific major for pre-med. A lot of them ended up being bio because they feel like, you know, can't stand bio. But philosophy was my first major. I had that before chemistry.
Really?
So
well, it's not easy to do
there, and
pre-med. You have to hit all the prereqs, right?
Right.
Like you have to hit all the classes.
Right. So it's easier if you're pre-med to also have a science major because there's a lot of those prereqs that are in common. So you'll hit both with the same classes.
Yeah, you're just going. It doesn't make
bio is like one of that. I mean, at Texas, it's like if you're pre-med and you have a bio major, you need I think it's like 1 or 2 extra classes to get the bio major besides the pre-med prereqs.
Yeah, so you went the harder route with chemistry. You'd be like a chemistry.
Yeah, there were a lot of chemistry classes that were definitely not needed for pre-med. That's for sure.
What's one, like nuclear engineering or something? Nuclear fission.
PChem, which is thermo. You know, analytical chemistry. All the
athletic chemistry.
No, analytical.
Analytical chemistry. Holy. I was gonna say I should be a chemistry major.
PChem is the beast.
Was PChem the one that you took that like your senior year whenever you should have taken it, like, or was that bio lab that you had to take to satisfy the?
I did both. I took biochem and PChem senior year. Bio lab. I was I think the only senior in a class of all freshmen.
Yeah, I was gonna say that you had one class where you're like, man, I'm the oldest person in like this class. In all those classes too, like on the curve, it's not like the upper division classes where it's, you know, more like actually content based. Like you could have a great grade and still get like curved down basically, right? Because everybody's
like so big because they're those like open survey classes that everybody has to take. So
No, right. So okay, so you're like interested in philosophy, and where did that come from?
well, I've always liked kind of reading and thinking about sort of the philosophical end of different things. And it wasn't exactly, the degree isn't all that you might think it is going into it. Most of it is very, hard set theories and different sort of frameworks and stuff that very theoretical, not as applied to sort of real life, quote unquote, as one may think, which is kind of
Yeah,
at some point
sure.
I think it's sort of a shame because you want to be able to learn the theories and stuff, sure, but then let's have the conversation where we apply it to actual real life scenarios, right?
Right. Well, and I mean, I remember talking about like your biology or philosophy of biology class. What was that? That
That
was
was
like in a
great.
more of applied class.
That was yeah, exactly. That was one that was definitely applied, and one of the few because there weren't really that many that were like that. Um,
And that was just applying it to like a biological space or talking about modern
different,
issues.
yeah, different issues, different bio issues. So we talked about CRISPR, which is gene editing, basically.
Right.
The ethics of that. Is it okay to know your unborn child's genetic code before they're born, see if they have any sort of issues? Should
Is
we be
CRISPR
editing out?
used for crops too? I think
Yeah,
that was
CRISPR is used for crops. It's used for one of the things we talked about that was really big was should we use it to essentially uh,
take out mutations or something.
take out mosquitoes in
Oh,
general from that because that would the amount of disease they cause and a lot of research says that if they were to kind of remove mosquitoes entirely from the ecosystem, there wouldn't be that much of a detriment. But of course,
yeah.
it's a dangerous kind of game to play.
I mean, yeah, there are animals out there that eat mosquitoes. This is okay. That was a dumb thing to say. Obviously, there are animals that eat mosquitoes. This is okay. Rewinding. This is like kind of what the first episode was like. It's just like general comments, like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, look,
There's going to be detriment if you kill the mosquitoes. Of course, there's going to be detriment.
There's going to be detriments, but I mean, the reason they're even considering is it because they think that there aren't that many species that rely on mosquitoes as really their primary source of food. So if we were to remove them entirely, it seems like everything would kind of still be okay.
I mean, and they don't serve any like pollination benefits or anything like that. They're just
exactly. And so I mean, and the amount of
sites at most.
Like people know of the big diseases they cause, malaria and such, but there are so many others that run rampant, especially in Africa that people don't even know about that are just deadly, and so many people catch them. So,
I mean, not to kind of go off on the whole mosquito thing, but I think it was on the show Billions. They were talking about how the Gates Foundation, and I don't know if this is true, but I would think it's true.
Mm-hmm.
The Gates Foundation donated like millions and millions of dollars worth of mosquito nets to, malaria-stricken countries.
Oh yeah.
And then they used them as fishing nets. And then people got sick because of the mosquito repellent on the nets. Basically got into
the food.
Yeah. And it was, a disaster basically, but
man, yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, there are like always unintended consequences basically to the things that happen. And again, I don't know if that's true or not, but it would be a good example of something that. Okay, so theory. How much philosophical theory? I guess there's 100,000 years of thinkers out there.
There's a lot to learn. I mean, so your basic for the degree, at least at Texas, I mean, you have to hit sort of like the basic intro requirements before you can kind of take any more specific things. So, I mean, your intro classes, you're going to have to take an ancient philosophy, which, is Socrates, Plato, all those guys, and then some other ones that are a little less known. And that's very sort of...
That's basic. You're going to have to do that.
Classic philosophy that you may not like. And a lot of times there's a lot of parts of it that I did not like, but it is necessary for a good understanding of that area. And then you also have to take the early modern stuff, which I like a lot more. Early modern is more like Descartes, Kant, and all those guys that people know a lot more. And then there's a whole other side of philosophy that people don't think about a lot, and that is logic. So you have to take a logic class at least, and that's crazy stuff. Like
I
that
remember
was
like the
probably
first
the
semester
hardest
we
one.
met. Yeah, you were like we were studying in the PCL, and you had this whiteboard filled up with like arcane symbols.
Because it's all symbols, and that was such a tough class. But
You're like, if Achilles does this, and you know Thaddeus does this, you know what
Yeah.
happens in this scenario,
yeah,
which
that
is crazy.
that was a really tough course, and that's a tough thing to understand. But also necessary because half of philosophy, what people don't understand, what philosophy really is or part of it at least, is creating arguments and drawing conclusions from premises.
Yeah, I was talking to Gab and JP, my roommate, about this earlier. I feel like a lot of economics, and I'm taking a human sexuality class right now, but a lot of this stuff is things that you wouldn't necessarily, it's things that you take as intuition, but then putting them into words. You wouldn't necessarily know how to put economic theories into words, but they make sense intuitively, right? And I imagine philosophy is kind of the same thing. Like, we have all these instincts and intuitions that have developed over thousands of years, and it's just putting all that into
So
words, right?
we definitely exactly, and I mean, and the point of putting it into words is if you're able to put it into words, whether spoken or written, you I think kind of by definition will have a better understanding of what that is.
No,
And
of course.
that like helps you be able to think about it better and more clearly. And then once you can put it into words, you can articulate that to other people.
Mm-hmm. One of the one of the classes. So we took a philosophy, or not a philosophy, psychology class together, your last semester, and I felt like psychology overlapped like a lot of other classes, and was very intuitive in that nature. But even underlying that, I feel like philosophy underlies psychology. Did you get that sense during the class?
Yeah. No, I think philosophy is a part of pretty much any discipline, I think, but especially psychology. The overlap, I think, is unbelievable. The amount, and I mean,
Yeah.
you can even see that when you read various psychologists and even psychiatrists' works. You can see it's deeply philosophical.
Yeah, well, just like the intuition of psychology, it's natural, right? Like,
Yeah.
why do people do what they do? And everybody knows that like, if you're in an elevator and everybody's looking at your phone, you're going to pull out your phone. Right? And it's just like some social, and I can't explain what the reasoning is behind that in philosophical terms, but, it's like philosophy that underlies that psychology, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
it's
even
like
though
it's the subconscious, which is something that's deeply psychological and deeply philosophical as well.
philosophical, right? Yeah, which is so crazy to me. I mean, I now taking this human sexuality class, I even have a deeper appreciation for psychology because so much of it is psychological. And that being said, like, if I could go back, dude, a double major in psychology would have been so cool.
Yeah, I know. That's something I've looked at too. That's something. Yeah, that's great stuff. I love psychology. But
yeah, if I could just go back, I know that you've talked about wanting to just study everything that there is. What's the character that you reference?
I'm the Oxford clerk from the Canterbury's Tales by Chaucer.
Canterbury Tales.
The Oxford clerk he stays home all day, reads books and studies, and kind of has like doesn't really dress too well, sort of has raggedy clothes and doesn't get out much.
He's he just knows everything though. You go for it.
I think I dress well though. I think I dress on.
I think I dress well too. Honestly, as far as like college students go, like a lot of people just wear athletic shorts every day. I've actually worn sweats every day this semester because of my golf class.
Jeez. Oh, I can't stand the
I only go to
the classroom.
I go to class like 2 days. So I only wear it to my morning class. So I have an 8 a.m. and then 10 o'clock is golf. And then I come back and shower and then I change. So then I'm wearing nicer clothes. But
8 a.m. 3 days a week.
Twice a week.
Oh.
Haven't missed a class yet.
Also,
that class is about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is so psychological and also philosophical. About risk taking and
yeah.
A lot of other. I mean, yeah, it's also these things that are intuitive about human nature that are also, I think, intuitively fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Discussing about why people do stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, so I mean, we could, when you mentioned entrepreneurship and the crossroads between that and philosophy, it made me think of this, and that is, well, first of all, what's frustrating to me sometimes is what I've noticed, at least in undergrad and now grad school, is if you're in a class that's not a philosophy class and you try to make a philosophical point, I've found so often that the professor none of it wants to have none of it. And
Yeah,
that is so frustrating to me, not as just a somebody who's has the degree in it, but just as a student, because there are so many questions of that nature that are important that need to be asked. I'll give you an example.
mm-hmm.
I was in a class last semester. Um, it was about design design in general. It's a very theoretical class on
This
design.
is at Northwestern.
Yeah,
Okay.
on design in general, and so he was giving an example about designing this one product, and I was like, that's interesting, but I was thinking to myself, is it actually really, when you get down to it, a good thing to be designing such a product? And I asked him, I was like, do you think it's really a good thing to be designing something like that? And he was like, well, that's a philosophical question, and we're not going to get into that here. This isn't a philosophy class. I'm like, I mean, give me a break. What kind of part of just about any discipline is, I think, an important
Having
part
morals
is
and
you're
ethics
doing
to
good. Exactly. And I'll give you
right.
another example of where a professor actually did embrace it, and brought it up himself, was at Texas in organic chemistry 2. There's this great professor who's there, Eric Anslin, who's I
Mm-hmm.
loved. And we were talking about some reaction, and he got very serious for a second and said that this is a good example. Remember that chemistry is a powerful tool that can be used for good and evil, because he explained how that was the reaction that created the gas chambers in the Holocaust and Nazi Germany. Is like, so you got to keep
Wow.
things in perspective here. That chemistry
Right.
is a powerful tool and it does a lot of great things, but people can use it for bad too. So I thought that was great. And science is one that's an area that I think is generally kind of tough to put philosophy into, and sometimes, but that's an
Mm-hmm.
example of where I think it was beautifully done.
Well, and I would also say that law is a place where philosophy and law should go hand in hand,
Oh
right?
gosh, I mean,
As well as morals and ethics.
of law.
Right. I mean, so we're reading John Locke right now in my political theory class, and it's like the first, modern philosopher that I've had to read. I've just switched to my minor to government now too, so um,
Hmm.
we, yeah, this is like the first thing that I've really been exposed to as far as like relatively modern philosophers. Um, but it's so interesting, and it kind of ties in. We read a little bit of Solzhenitsyn together. It kind of ties in with Solzhenitsyn too, and just ideas about government, morals, right and wrong. And then, kind of Hobbes as a foil to Locke, not to get too into like government philosophy here, but, um, you know, just that there's two sides of a lot of it too,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and at the law school now, it's definitely philosophy is the foundation of just about every part of it. The foundation necessarily. There's
What?
a
Go ahead.
I was just say there was an example just the other night. I was in a class on torts. And tort, is basically just like a harm, essentially. And we were
Mhm.
talking about the philosophy behind why should people be able to recover damages from other people for torts? And there's a bunch of, philosophical theories. First, it's to decentivize bad behavior by punishing
Sure.
those. Another is to reward people for being hurt. Another
Mhm.
is efficiency, because that's a more efficient market. Loss
Then where
spreading,
everybody's just,
right?
you know,
Loss spreading, which is not the same person is paying the same damages, so we're spreading that sort of loss between the parties. So
right.
it's just fascinating. It's every part of law that I've seen, pretty much.
Right. Yeah. So outside of like law, let's say somebody's coming to school and they either want to go pre-med or into business. Say, what's the case for studying philosophy? And I have an idea, but I want to know what you.
Well, so what I would say is my
They're coming in like
recommendation.
you know, you have no. These are people that like don't have a major declared, basically.
Right. I mean, my recommendation for anybody when it comes to majoring in philosophy is don't major in just philosophy. Do philosophy and
Right.
then double in something else, because
Well, yeah,
that's,
I think
I
if you
mean,
look at like lowest paid majors, philosophy has to be
yeah,
up.
because I mean, the only career you can really have with philosophy that's decent is teaching philosophy for the most part.
Right.
Um, but that's not to say it'll be tremendously helpful in whatever you do. So that's why I'd say major in philosophy, but then add something else on later once you kind of figure out what you think you might be interested in.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I agree. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself no matter what you're doing, um, unless you're like really passionate about pre-med. Biology is one of those majors too. What can you do with biology degree?
Not much with just an undergrad biology degree.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, like you
you
can always
need a
get like sales
graduate degree
jobs no
pretty
matter
much.
what you're
Right.
doing. But that being
Yeah, but
said,
that's
if you
tough.
just love biology, yeah, you're probably gonna be. You could just be teaching if you don't go to med school, right?
Right. True that.
Um, well, so okay, in my in that same entrepreneurship class, we had this guy Mort Meyerson, who's from Fort Worth. He was a large donor to the Dallas Symphony recently, and the Symphony Center in Dallas is named after him. And he worked with Ross Perot on his presidential campaign.
Hmm.
He was one of the first investors in Mark Cuban's audio net or broadcast net, um, and has done really well for himself. But he was talking about the roles that morals and ethics play, especially in business and whenever you're funding people um, for different ventures, especially entrepreneurs. Um, and I think having that background in philosophy would be beneficial as something to point to, especially in today's world. I'd say the post Madoff Enron
Yeah.
world
Right. Yeah. Seriously.
of having, some sort of direction. So would you say that philosophy, and this is something that I would say that I struggle with, do you say that philosophy has helped you see both sides of the coin
Totally.
more now?
Totally. Yeah.
Like,
It's helped me. Well, it's helped me see both sides. I don't know if it's necessarily changed my opinion or view on things, but it's definitely helped me see both sides. One thing I've learned definitely from majoring in philosophy was beforehand it would kind of be if I had a disagreement with somebody about something, it would be I would look at it as me versus that person. And
sure.
now after philosophy, because what philosophy is okay, here's the issue and here's the theories on both sides. Let's look at both and see which has more weight. So now it's more of if I have a disagreement with somebody, it's I think of that as sort of me and them on the same team versus the problem.
Yeah.
And that's like the basics of communication is we know different things. Talk to me so I can understand what you know, and then I'll tell you what I know, and then we both have more knowledge because of that, and maybe we can figure things out that way.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's always what I've seen in a lot of, political and religious debates, especially, is that there's always like a misunderstanding, like some fundamental misunderstanding or misrepresentation on one side, right? And it's like, you get down to like a fundamental of okay, I believe this because of this. Um, that's usually where reconciliation or um, people come together because you understand what's
Why?
actually going on,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
right.
Jordan Peterson's
Uh,
big questions, like why?
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, and he has a lot to say about all of this.
Well, yeah, another great example of psychology and philosophy, um, and the intermingling of the two. Um, all right, I mean, we kind of talked about careers. You can basically do anything with it, right? As long as you double major.
Yeah, that's why you can't do anything. I mean, there's not. You can't be a professional philosopher basically, unless you're just
If you
like
get
a writer. Or, I mean, so
what do you give me an idea of? I think I ask this all the time, but some of the professions in your current program, what are those like?
my current program, it's all over the place. I mean, there's a handful of us that are doing med school. There's a few that want to go on to law school. There's a lot. There's a lot that has to do with intellectual property and kind of being
Hmm.
IP
Oh, okay.
specialists. That's a big focus. Um, there's a lot that actually has to do with technology and AI and the legal
Oh,
kind of
really?
aspects of that. Yeah, because that's, everybody knows that's a booming field and stuff like that. So there's a lot of people that have interest in that. But really diverse, really diverse.
But what I mean is it? Does it give you like if you're not going to be a lawyer, and is it just so that people have more of an understanding of like where they stand in relation to these things? So like if you're a business owner, you would take this program to learn more about what your lawyer is talking about, or
Well, I wouldn't say so because I think that would be excessive, an excessive way of satisfying that need for you. But I think
sure.
I see it more of as there are going to be there every I think that pretty much any firm or any company or any hospital or whatever is going to rather hire somebody with an idea of how the law works than somebody who doesn't
Uh-huh.
have that. Um, and there's also now an expanding field of positions where employers want specialists who understand the law but who are actually not lawyers, because there's a premium with that
Sure.
too.
Sure.
Economically and both, you know, understanding, like this program focuses on law, but also business too and technology. So having an understanding of all of that instead of just the law and, reading textbook law.
So I mean, it fits in well with your direction where you want to go. Then I mean,
Fits in well for me for,
yeah,
because as a physician, I want to be kind of eventually a front office doc, hospital administrator, maybe.
yeah, right, yeah.
So,
So having somebody that understands all sides of that, including the medical side, is crucial. Let's see here. What else were we going to talk about?
also,
If somebody's gonna
I was going
go
to
ahead.
say, so after just in general, the degree, sort of, you take those fundamental classes, and then that's where it kind of blossoms open. You can kind of choose your own path a little. And so you can choose between epistemology, theory of knowledge, or if you want to take a course on metaphysics, or if you want to do something like medical ethics, anything like that. That's where you can really choose, and that's kind of I think the most fun part of the degree, because you
Hmm.
can really kind of find your sort of small focus of philosophy that you really want to focus on. Um,
No, right. Well, you can also, if you're somewhere that has a robust program as well, you're obviously going to be more.
yeah.
Those options are going to be more available
Hmm.
than other places, and especially, I'll say this too. I think the case for liberal arts education, um, in general, right now, we're making the case for a liberal arts education as well.
I don't
Would
know
you
if I
say
want
no?
to. I don't want. I think it sounds like we're making the case. I don't want to make that case though. I definitely.
Really?
Yeah.
Are
No.
you
I think.
anti?
I think liberal arts and the humanities is like a failing industry right now. I don't think we're doing very well with it at all. And I think I was lucky because I think Texas philosophy it's a very good program, and I think they're still doing it the right way, from what I could tell.
Really?
And what I
Well,
mean by that, really, the right way, the biggest thing for me is what's being taught objective and not subjective, right?
yeah.
And seeing
No,
both
that's
sides of the coin, which I think is something that's it's becoming hard to come by, and it's especially
I
pertinent
agree.
in the liberal arts and the humanities because it's not science. Science, everything else, science, business,
It's
it's kind of just
definitive.
facts and definitive. Liberal arts and
Right.
humanities is it is the way you show it to people, kind of.
Well, and that's why I'm saying that I would make the case for a liberal arts education as somebody that's economics. Whenever you could study finance, I was always bored in my accounting classes because I could just learn it online, and that's what I've done. Is just like learn it on Udemy or something. Um, you know, Paying a bunch of money to learn how a balance sheet works, unless you're going to be a CPA, and that's something that you actually want to do.
Right.
It's
Well, so that's
are you saying
also
it's a
why
failing industry? It's a failing industry because of the hard sciences or business or engineering having more applicable career paths.
no, I think it's a failing industry because universities and professors are teaching more of their
Predominantly
agenda.
one-sided.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think they're teaching their agenda rather than both sides of the coin.
that's fair. I
Um,
mean, that being said, like
and I mean, the
a liberal
research that liberal arts and humanities departments are putting out is just absolutely terrible. I read a
really,
stat the other day that was something like I think it was like 90% of humanities papers nowadays aren't cited once, which is ridiculous. And there's a reason for that because people know that it's a load of garbage, most of it.
yeah,
But I mean, there's also the problem that really kind of gets to me, which is nowadays, and especially in the philosophy classroom, it's like we're just writing books about books about books. It's like, all right, we'll write a book about what Socrates wrote, and then I'll write a book about what he said about Socrates, and then write about
totally.
we need more original thought. And one of the problems that I have seen, not so much in the philosophy classroom, but in other classrooms, is if you have an assignment and you put sort of some of your original ideas in there, it's like a lot of professors are having none of it. They want to see your
Really.
citations and hearing your interpretation of other ideas rather than what you want to put forth. And I think that's a shame, and I think that needs to change.
No, I agree. Something that I actually, this ties in well. And so in my political theory class, it was like extra credit. You go to this talk. This guy was one of the, I guess, predominant professors in the field, is from the University of Houston. He was giving a talk on Rousseau. Are you familiar with
Yeah.
Rousseau at all? I had no idea until like this talk, basically. But
Mm-hmm.
apparently, him and Locke are, and I mean, yeah, again, to my philosophy knowledge. But so he's giving a talk on a paper he wrote on Rousseau, and I also think the field is somewhat inaccessible. Like a lot of like liberal arts, especially, is relatively inaccessible if you don't use $5 words and you know have a predisposition to these things. Because I had to see through, you know, on some level, the vernacular that he's using to get to his point.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of academic papers are written in a certain way, and
Oh my
it's
gosh, yeah, some of them are just outrageous.
so esoteric. That's the word I was trying to like define it
Yeah,
recently, and I
yeah, that's a
couldn't
good
think of the
way
word
of.
esoteric.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that. I think a lot of that is just the ego of the author.
Oh, totally.
You
Yeah.
know, and that's a shame because it's like there are so many people that want to understand these ideas and want to have that conversation. So it's like, offer it to them in a way they can understand. And that doesn't mean to dumb it down. And I hate that phrase, dumbing. Don't dumb it down, but you should work on your set on it yourself so that you can communicate it in a more understanding way.
And I'll say this: esoteric, probably a $2 word. Esoteric's the best way to describe it. And if like you're saying things that are the best way to describe something, I understand that.
Right.
Ways to say esoteric, I could say dry, whatever else. It's there's other ways to say things and have conversations with other people like outside of your field. Because at the end of the day, I forget who it was. It was in a movie, which is terrible that I'm quoting movies, but it was Good Will Hunting. He's like, I don't want to just write books and then get good reviews from the people that I give good reviews to, which is the
Right.
whole industry, right? Everybody just gives each other good reviews, and then
Yeah. Well,
that's
I
it.
mean, it's like, yeah, it's frustrating at times. But
It also goes to I told you this before we started, that my political theory professor was saying America's the country that is founded on the most philosophical values, but we think about those philosophical values and philosophy in general the least out of any country. Um,
Totally.
On some hand, I think that there are issues though that require philosophical thinking like today, right?
Yeah.
In today's news. And he was saying that's a shame. It is a shame.
It's a shame. It's undisputable that it was founded on a set of ideas that was revolutionary at the time. The idea of, well, first of all, let's start a new nation that's built on nations, in the sense that we're having people from everywhere can come here to start this new thing.
Right.
The idea of freedom, which is general, but you can break down the specifics of that, and the biggest is probably the freedom of expression and speech and thought, which is something that was somewhat unheard of at the time. And you're absolutely right that I think we've forgotten the basis of the founding of the US, and now I think that's kind of coming back to bite us a bit.
Well, I would say we're still, in the sense of like liberalism, we're still at the front of basically liberal societies. Would you agree? In the sense of like John Locke's sense of liberalism, not like the modern
right.
American.
Yes.
As far as like direct democracy, I forget what the term Locke uses, but
representative democracy.
Representative democracy, the like basically the industrious get rewarded for being industrious.
Yes.
That's that's the founding of those are some of the principles that are behind all of this. And whenever those get forgotten, that's,
and a lot of it is
so
principles that underlie capitalism. Really,
right.
Capitalism is a very, pretty much any economic system is, but capitalism is a very philosophically based system, I think.
Yeah, well, we talk about in class, we talk about like basically the growth of history and how it's gone from, almost a theological based societies to like feudal and monarch based societies to now most of the world is based on capitalism, and the individual wants and individual desires and goals. Basically, you go after those, and that rewards the individual. You can see that growth cycle as philosophers think and put ideas out there. Society grows in that sense, right?
Right.
By building on that. I see that. So you wrote Alan Watts here. I've heard a lot of Alan Watts just on like YouTube video, like motivation videos, basically.
Yeah. And that's why I don't like when he's cliched, because I think he's often very too cliched. But the reason I like him, and I've listened and read a good amount of him, is that, which is kind of what I was saying earlier, he will take the philosophy, he will take the theories and the principles that are taught in the classroom, and he'll then apply it to life. Whether it's in the concept and in the area of a relationship or a failure or achieving a goal, because that's like the most important thing that I think we need to be teaching, especially undergraduates, is how do we deal with the things in real life, and how can we use the philosophy we learn to help us deal with them. I think that's the most fundamental thing.
No, totally. Yeah. How do we deal with issues? That's all of life, basically,
And understanding from all the sides.
No, totally. People that are one-sided are the worst people to talk to, right? You're never, it's just miserable. What do you think? So I think one of Alan Watts's things is, somebody comes into his office and they're like, I don't know what I want to do. And he goes, what do you love to do? And she says, oh, I love riding horses. And he goes, well, ride horses for a living. I don't totally agree with that.
I would say he was probably wrong about that at his time. I think today that might be true because that's kind of also that makes me think of a Gary Vee thing. It's like ride horses and just post pictures on your Instagram of you riding horses and monetize it.
Okay.
Right?
Well, all
That's what
right.
I'm saying though. Watts had no idea.
That's a good point. That's a good
know?
point.
But
Well, okay, yeah. At that time,
that's
we
not what
can
he
accept that he
intended.
was wrong. Yeah. Well, yeah. In that sense, though, so everything becomes work. It doesn't matter whether it's something that you enjoy doing. At some point, it's going to be work. You know.
Well, there are going to be ups and downs, and I mean, I think the idea is you should find something that you should do something for work that you don't hate. I think is the bottom line. That should be
Well,
like the base. That should be the baseline to find something that you at least don't hate, and then if you
Yeah.
could handle that, and then maybe you can find something else, and you can move up, or you can find a different thing, right?
Yeah. Totally. I
But
mean,
yeah,
look, selling tea. Selling tea on Instagram. I wouldn't hate that. I
yeah,
think. Would
you
you
could do-
say that today there are more or less miserable people than like 50 years ago?
Oh gosh.
And what
That's such a tough question because I mean, undoubtedly people are, especially in the West, people are freer and have more money. That's undoubtable that people have more money, that people have more freedoms than ever before. So if you were to say look at it exclusively from that, you would say people are absolutely in a better condition and less miserable now. But I mean,
well,
the problem
condition
that we're
doesn't
seeing,
necessarily
well, less
indicate
miserable, I
happy.
would say. Right. Well, that's what I'm going to get to is that
Yeah.
now it's like, well, I don't think people understand that how much better off we are now than we were just 50 years ago.
Right.
And so when you don't have um, the gratitude for that, then it makes it a lot easier for you to stay miserable and in kind of that hole. And now, I mean, people are going to say, well, there's still a lot of people who are in terrible situations and not very well off. And it's like, yes, there are a lot of people who are still getting dealt bad hands,
Sure.
but that bad hand that they're being dealt would have been a lot worse 50 years ago. If that makes sense.
Something that Locke says, and this is like the turn of the 18th century, so a while back, was that to be a laborer in England than Indian or Native American chief in America, because the laborer in England knows where food's coming from. They have a bed to sleep in. It's not just at the time they thought just pelts on the ground or something.
Right.
And that's one side, but on the other side, labor does make for a tougher life if you have to do something every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the chieftain might be happier, arguably.
Right. Yeah, and well, that's also something people I don't think about is that pretty much everybody's grandparents or great grandparents was like some sort of hard labor serf type job.
Oh, totally.
Like nobody's
Yeah.
great grandparent was sitting around posting pictures all day for a job, or whatever the equivalent like of the time would even be. It's like
Yeah, right.
no, or like playing video
Well,
games
you'd,
all day.
you'd be
There wasn't
taking
even an
pictures
equivalent
for
of
like
that.
for a magazine or something. No, absolutely not. You're not a professional bridge player back in the day. It's 50 years
Yeah,
ago.
exactly. Like, and that's why I mean, just we need to have more gratitude for the fact that we're not that everybody isn't plowing a field or sweeping chimneys or laying bricks every day.
Whew.
You know,
So, I mean, should we be celebrating the fact that Ninja can make like $10 million a year to play Fortnite? I I think we might have just made the case for it.
I think so. I mean, I think so. I
Like
think
that somebody can do that's awesome.
yeah, exactly. If that's something that you've worked for and you've set that up and I think absolutely. And another thing people don't realize is that wealthy people generally are extraordinarily generous too.
No, totally.
So it's a win-win for everybody because
Yeah.
they're extraordinarily generous and they're giving and they want to give opportunity as well as generous with their money. So I think
Well,
absolutely
yeah.
you reap
I
what you
mean,
sow.
you look at the Gates and Warren Buffett and other people that have taken the pledge to give away like 90% of their wealth before they die.
Yeah.
How can you be mad about that? If you spent your whole life acquiring something and then you spend the rest of your life just giving 90% of it away, and you can make the argument that, look, if you have like $5 billion, you're going to be left with $500 million. Like 500 million, you're not bad off. But at the same time, you give away $4.5 billion
Yep. Yeah. And
that you
well, I
spent your
mean,
whole life acquiring. Like that was your reward for
right.
what you were doing.
And people don't understand also in making all that wealth, Gates and Buffett and whoever you want to say, Zuckerberg, whoever, is employing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of employees,
Sure.
is supporting even more through parts and suppliers and contractors. So it's
Right.
unbelievable.
No, right.
That made me think of Michael Bloomberg, who
Uh-huh.
I think it was like 6 months ago or so, donated $1.8 billion to Johns Hopkins, not for like to build buildings or something, for financial aid exclusively. $1.8 billion donation for financial aid.
So does everybody go in there for free for the next 100 years?
It probably could. I mean, seriously. That's
They
just
could. I mean,
unbelievable.
you don't have to charge anybody that gets in tuition.
The generosity.
For,
That's ridiculous.
I mean, how many people are in a med school? Wait, are you talking about the med school or about like just the whole university?
The university.
Yeah, that's insane.
So
Did he go to
listen,
Johns Hopkins?
I think he did because he's given so much to them. Like this isn't the first time he's given a ton of money, but this is by far the most. I remember when I toured there for undergrad, and the tour guide said, "Oh yeah, and just the other week, Michael Bloomberg donated $400 million to our School of Public Health." No big deal.
Would you say that's one of the reasons that their health programs are so robust and well?
I mean, they have such distinguished alumni and support.
Yeah, I mean that is something that sets great universities apart, and that's why they keep getting. That's why they stay up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
People didn't donate money to Harvard every year.
You can see it with academics. Same with athletics too. It's like the schools with the biggest athletic budget and the biggest athletic donations usually are at the top.
The biggest, right? I mean, there's also network effects that come from that too. Like,
yeah,
if you're great, you're gonna stay great.
Mm-hmm.
If you're at the bottom, there's a reason the Oakland A's haven't won a World Series.
I think the longest is the Mariners, the longest drought right now for World Series in all of professional sports. Of basketball, hockey, football, baseball. Mariners are the team that hasn't won a championship the longest right now.
The A's have never won one.
No.
Right?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's true, is it?
Hold on. We got to settle this. Oakland is World Series. Oh my God. What am I talking about?
Yeah, I don't know what you're saying. 9?
What? Oh my. It's 9.
They've never won a championship.
The movie Moneyball freaking skewed me. Mariners are one of 7 Major League Baseball teams who have never won a World Series championship, and one of 2, along with the Nationals, to never have played in a World Series. That's terrible. The city of Seattle also has other things going for it, so you can't. It's like I don't feel bad for Browns fans because you have LeBron.
Right.
Like, and you're also one of the most covered fan bases.
They absolutely are because of LeBron for the most part, and because they're so bad in football.
Well, because they're bad, but also, okay. I mean, last year is pretty miserable.
And
but
what about
a hardcore Browns fan?
Indians have been a great team in baseball. lately.
They've been what?
Indians have been a great team in baseball the
Oh,
past few
yeah.
years.
Well, yeah. So they have LeBron, and then you get like fun players to watch every year. They just don't really perform. Isn't
Yeah.
Baker there?
Baker's in Cleveland, yeah. Uh, we went from we're on the philosophy of sports right now. The philosophy of Cleveland.
Well, I mean, this kind of ties in. Hey, there's a reason that people can make so much money playing professional sports. Oh my gosh, wait. So something else. Have you seen, the tweets that are like, stop giving fans on the front row your signed sneakers, like at basketball
Yes.
stuff? What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, we'll have to launch it into the third deck. I mean, come on. I
Everybody
mean,
the
first of
back row
all,
gets a set of sneakers.
I think, especially at probably basketball games is probably where that might be true. But I think at least in like football games, I know so many people that save up and go to like one football game a year and save up and go get great seats. So it's like, come on, give them a break.
It's not Mark Cuban's kids there every game, I mean, okay, it is for Mavericks games, but
Well, that's why basketball I think, is a different story. Basketball, if you're sitting courtside in basketball, you're probably a celebrity. Or somebody who has the money.
Right. I mean, like seeing Manny Pacquiao and
Well, the fights, that's definitely the case in the fights.
Well, in the fights, but I'm saying like Pacquiao and then Mayweather were both sitting like.
I saw that, and they dapped each other up.
Yeah, they dapped each other up. That's funny.
Yeah,
but we live in. I mean, that being said, if you're complaining because your form of entertainment is going into an air conditioned, arena, and you're watching your favorite team play, and you're getting enjoyment out of that, and then you ride home in a car, and you're upset because the millionaires' kids are getting the signed sneakers.
Right.
I think there's better things to.
I think there's better things
worried
to be
about.
upset about. And also, what I'm thinking about now is that's part of the front row experience too. You're paying for that ticket because you want to be close to the players and feel like you're sort of in the game, and that if you have and that you want an interaction with them, right?
Yeah, totally.
Especially basketball, you're literally on the court in basketball.
Yeah, well, and if you save up like for those tickets too, that's so next level. Yeah. I remember, I mean, look, I don't come from like a rich family, but we one time we went to a Mavs game, and like you can just like walk down during like warm-ups whenever, like an hour and a half before the game, and we walked down there, and like Mark Cuban came by and took a picture with my brother and I.
That's awesome.
That's like it's like one of the coolest things ever. But like we didn't have to pay for that, so that was pretty sick. And like there are those experiences that you can still have without being courtside the whole time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. Well,
they're not giving the signed shoes to the millionaires either. They're giving it to the kids.
The kids, like making the kid happy.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I mean, unless the parents are stealing them out of the kids' room at night and auctioning them off. Which I don't think they are.
The parents should have studied philosophy in that case. There's those parents work in immoral environments probably.
Right.
But also they don't need to auction them off because they could afford the front row.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So
that's actually a good is if you wait. If you like had like a $5 ticket, that you got last minute from a scalper. You're gonna sell the shoes. I'd sell the shoes.
Oh,
even if I went
sure.
now,
if you got the shoes, sure.
Even if I went now, like, I mean, I guess I'm a college kid, but I generally would sell them if I wasn't like, the biggest fan of like Steph Curry or somebody or Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I guess some people value like having the memorabilia like on display in their house or something. I mean, it depends how.
Yeah, if that was like your birthday, and you were 6.
Right.
That's one thing. I guess that's why they don't give it to like college kids because they'll just sell it.
They know.
The athletes know they went to college. Basketball players especially, they all went to college. They know how it is. All right, any final thoughts? Is that what you're gonna?
Yeah, I was gonna say final thoughts on everything. We went from majoring in philosophy to philosophy of sports. Final thoughts is I think it's a great degree to have in tandem, I should say, with whatever else you want to do. and that we need to stress seeing both sides of the coin and, evaluating an argument from all aspects, even if it's the one that you may not agree with, just seeing that
Sure.
and kind of going from there. What about you? What do you think? Final thoughts?
No, I like how intertwined everything is today, especially in at Texas, and how I get to take a lot of different classes that kind of intertwine philosophy, psychology, and these different subjects. And I appreciate that, but I wish I could still learn more. It's a shame that I have to graduate and not, I can't just take more philosophy classes or more psychology classes.
Right.
So that being said, I do think that philosophy is one of the most applicable double majors for, almost across the board. Maybe not necessarily engineering, but right.
Yeah, I think across the board it could be tremendously helpful, if not in your career, then in your personal life. So,
No, totally. That's it for episode 2, or oh my gosh, season 2, episode 1. We went all in on talking about philosophy. Share your thoughts, whether you would be interested in studying philosophy or learning more about philosophy. Any parting books to read for anybody that's interested?
Yeah, so I have actually brought a few out. So first is I have this one by, I don't know if it's in the camera.
Young.
Yeah, Carl Jung, The Undiscovered Self. Read that recently. I can link that in the YouTube description, I guess. Just a great book on kind of individual sort of integrity and stuff like that. And then a classic. This is more hardcore philosophy.
Oh my god!
Trial and Death of Socrates, which is just great. It's it's super thin, so it's easy. But I'll link these two. That's like you said, that's episode 1 of the second season of We're All In on Philosophy. We got next week Justin Wolf talking about government undergrad and law school. Then we got great co-host Jacob on economics. And then 4, we have a good friend, JP Height, talking about RTF, radio, television, film. We look forward to that. Like, comment, give us your thoughts. We love to hear from you, and we'd love to respond. So until next week.
We got a great season coming up.
Great season.
Be sure to subscribe, not only on iTunes podcast. We're going to look at getting this on Spotify too, so be sure to subscribe there, as well as look for the YouTube channel coming out soon. If you're not already following the Instagram page, it's at We're All In Pod. Always great content up on there, and that's really going to be exploding over the next couple weeks. And by the time this is out, there will already be a bunch of new stuff on there as well. So, Tom, take us out.
Well, absolutely. So that's all for today, All In on Philosophy, and we will be talking to you next week. All right. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.